Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Sid Jones. Welcome back. This is a Sid Talk, so you're not going to want to miss. So, before we get started, I just want to say, holy shit. I've been waiting a long time for a decent Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nomination. Now, here's my issue, okay? And this is where I've got a problem, all right? So, my first problem is this. We've got Jay-Z in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year, and Jay-Z, when I was doing the voting, as you guys should have been doing, there were votes. You could go in and cast your vote for whoever it is that you wanted that were nominated. New York Dolls being one of them, the Go-Go's, Tina Turner, Rage Against the Machine, Iron Maiden, and of course, Foo Fighters. Now, those are the ones that matter. Those are the only ones that really matter. The rest of them, meh. But here's where I've got an issue. Jay-Z had he was down at the very bottom for the nominations. All right. I think that dude was sitting at like maybe 5,000 to 10,000 votes. And now all of a sudden he's in the class of 2021. So what was the point of having a vote, right? Christine Vorse, how you doing? Thank you for joining me. Appreciate you greatly. So in the big picture of all this, I'm thinking to myself, how the fuck did this happen? So I go back and look, and as it turns out, there's a little clause in there. There's a little asterisk, and it says, we take your opinions, we take your votes, and then, of course, other things come into play. So there's other things that end up happening. When it comes to voting, it's not just the popular vote of the masses, it's the powers that be, so to speak. So I'm like, well, that's weird that Jay-Z got in, and never mind Iron Maiden or fucking Rage Against the Machine. Like, fuck them, I guess. But there is a silver lining, and this is what I've been excited for. And this is what I said. I don't care who wins. It's MJ Baker. Excellent. There's one band, and for one person in particular that I wanted to have win. And that person and that band would be the Foo Fighters, because of Pat Smear. Now, Pat Smear, if you guys aren't aware, he was also in a band you might have heard of, small band, from Seattle called Nirvana. Pat Smear was in that band. Pat Smear was also in the band that you probably, I swear, never heard of unless you've spoken to me. And it's the Germs, one of the greatest punk rock bands of all time. Heroes of mine, like if it wasn't for Darby Crash, if it wasn't for the Germs, there would be no Sid Jones. I would say that about the Sex Pistols and the Ramones as well. But definitely, of all the inspirations, the Germs is definitely there. So to see Pat Smear in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is fucking phenomenal. Like, when I found out, I was ecstatic. I was like, fine, take Jay-Z, who had one good song, and put him in, I guess. Like, as long as we got the Foo Fighters, I'm happy. Mainly because of Pat. Now, I don't know if Pat was already inducted because of, his time with Nirvana, but this is Tina Turner's second nomination, and I believe she's been inducted. And I'm like, well, why do you get involved in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice? So I think it's the Rock Hall, and I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but they're playing it safe, essentially, is what they're doing. They're playing it safe, and it's rather ridiculous. There's a diversity in the Rock Hall, I guess, because the Oscars aren't diverse enough that the Rock Hall turned around and had to be. Now, it shouldn't be called the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, as a lot of people would agree. Biggie Smalls is not rock and roll, yet he still managed to get in the Rock Hall. Now, to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, there's certain things that you have to do, certain things that come into play. And as far as diversity goes, you could have inducted the Bad Brains and been none the worse for it. If you're worried about diversity, put in the fucking Bad Brains, for fuck's sakes. You could put in it's just weird how they end up doing it, right? So I don't know if Pat's already been inducted with Nirvana. That I don't know. I know he was a member of Nirvana, and then he wasn't. So I don't know. He could have already been inducted. But the fact of the matter is, Pat Smear, of one of my favorite bands of all time, to be inducted, along with the Foo Fighters. I mean, like, the Foo Fighters just kind of like extra. I've never been like the biggest Foo Fighters fan of all time. Their music isn't bad. It's not my forte. But the big win right here is Pat. It's kind of like being a Tom Brady fan and not giving a fuck about the Buccaneers, but the Buccaneers end up winning the Super Bowl, and Tom Brady gets a Super Bowl ring. So I'm ecstatic. I'm ecstatic. Now, why they would pick Jay-Z, I have no clue. Why they went with him instead of Mary J. Blige, and she's not even rock either. So, like, if you're worried about diversity, like, why didn't you lean that way? Because they're both neck and neck at the very bottom of the fucking tier. You feel me? Old Iron Maiden had a huge impact on early metal and deserved to be in a long time ago. I agree. I fucking agree. And it's been a long time coming. And what's weird is it was Tina Turner, some other person, Iron Maiden, Foo Fighters, and I think it was the Go-Go's. So, and the Go-Go's are also in the Rock Hall. So I'll take that as a victory. But what I find it weird is by the way that the people had voted, Iron Maiden should have been in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year for class of 2021, and they're not. I mean, for fuck's sake, so that's kind of a misstep. And I understand why people don't like the Rock Hall. For the longest time, I didn't like the Rock Hall. You know, it was something I didn't endorse. But as time went on, the reason why I started supporting something like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was because of this new age of music. You've got, you know, the Tekashi 6ix9ines and the Lil Xans and the blue faces and the yellow faces and the green faces and these shitty ass rappers that I hope never make it into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That I hope that if they're ever nominated, God fucking forbid, that they are cast away. I mean, I would rather see somebody like the Insane Clown Posse in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame before any of these fucking idiots, and that says a lot, because I don't think that the Insane Clown Posse should be eligible for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame unless it's for Great Malenko. Because you got to remember, Slash of Guns N' Roses and Steve Jones of the Sex Pistols and of Thin Lizzy, by the way, also did work on that project for Great Malenko. Now, that was mostly the record labels doing. I'm not sure it was something. And also Alice Cooper doing the intro for the album. So I could kind of see Great Malenko getting in there, and that's why ICP becomes eligible for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But let's be honest, they're not getting into the Rock Hall because of Fearless Fred Fury or any of their other albums. It would strictly be because of Great Malenko. And rightfully so at that point, if that's their reason. Because Eminem is eligible because he did a song with, I think it was Bruce Springsteen or something. He did a certain song, and now he's technically eligible to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And he's Eminem. Like, you really can't disagree with the guy. He's already won Grammys when he said he didn't want to win Grammys. And, you know, so there's been a little bit of hypocrisy when it comes to Eminem and it comes to his music. But the fact is, the Rock Hall has focused on being about music. Now, there's a place called Tennessee, all right? There's a place called Tennessee. And in Tennessee, they've got like the Elvis Presley and Johnny Cash and all those motherfuckers, right? But Johnny Cash being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame makes sense. Absolutely. Elvis Presley being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame makes sense. Problem is, you've got these social standards now that kind of get in the way of this. You've got people that like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You've got people that want their favorite bands or whatever to get inducted. But now, in the day of technology, there's a certain scandal or certain accusations like you have no chance, right? Like, I mean, are we ever going to see Marilyn Manson in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Probably fucking not, right? Like, it's not foreseeable. Granted, the WWE won't put Chris Benoit in their Hall of Fame, which I think is criminal because of what he had done. Instead of focusing on what they've done in their profession, instead of looking at the success of what they have done as far as being an artist or a wrestler, or whatever their talent might be, and superseding and exceeding any and all expectations, I really feel like is bullshit. You know what I'm saying? So Memphis, thank you, Memphis, Tennessee, but Tennessee nonetheless. But Memphis is like country town like that. I'm sure they've got their own like little mini Rock and Roll Hall of Fame type thing for their country singers. I'm sure like Willie Nelson and all them have played there for their ceremonies and so on. I know country music television back in the day, right around the time of MTV, country music television had their own awards. I don't even know if they do anymore. You know, I know there's such thing as the MTV Awards, and I don't understand that. What's weird is the MTV Awards was also doing something where they were doing like, you know, actor, best villain or whatever. Like, they're really kindergarten type categories, if you ask me. But Jack Nicholson got an MTV award for being the best villain in the film The Departed. The Departed deserved all of its awards. Fun fact, that was the first film that got Martin Scorsese an Oscar. Yeah, I know. It's fucking crazy, right? Fun fact, the Dropkick Murphys Shipping Up to Boston was on that was in that film for the end credits and for like certain parts of the film. It was played throughout, and they also got like a little bit of a nod, and a little bit of credit for that. Then, if you guys remember, that became one of their biggest songs, to the point of where in 2004, now this is prior to the film Departed, they also get to be like, I think like the first band to ever get World Series rings. Figure that shit out. Like that is something you can't take from them. Like they each got a World Series ring. Members of the team, the Boston Red Sox, said we couldn't have won if it wasn't for the Dropkick Murphys. That shit's crazy, man. Shit's crazy. But so people deserve a nod. Some people deserve a little bit of credit, and especially when it comes to music. I think that music plays a huge role in soundtracks, plays a huge role in our everyday lives. It does its job. Problem is, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame operates a little differently than we'd like it to. Should there be a rap Hall of Fame? Maybe. Problem is, if there was ever a rap Hall of Fame, you've got Biggie that's going to be in the Rock Hall and in the Hip Hop Hall. Like, it's not like they're going to buy out that exhibit. Now, how it works is, if you get inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you get an exhibit inside the museum in Cleveland, Ohio. How they put the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in fucking Cleveland, Ohio, of all places, is weird to me. Like, Ohio? Like, it's got the only thing good going for it is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And again, I used to be opposed to it back in the days when I was like, you know, this pissed off kid, pissed off. But as a matter of fact, just a couple years ago, I was pissed off at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because of how they did shit and people that opposed it and why people opposed it. You can actually go and find this video on Rockfeed, and there's artists, famous artists and band members and so on, that talk shit about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and why they don't like it because of some of the bands that didn't get inducted yet. They inducted Biggie Smalls and Mary J. Blige and whoever, Tina Turner. And it's not rock music like we know it as. So their standards are a little different than the rest of ours. So why should we celebrate the class of 2021? Small victories, my friends. And I've always said this, you celebrate the small victories, because if you don't, you'll go insane. You'll fall into depression. So you got to celebrate your small victories. And the small victory that we got is Pat Smear with the Foo Fighters being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which means we get an exhibit for the Foo Fighters, which means we get to see, hopefully, possibly, maybe a little bit of Pat Smear's history as well. Like, I've never been to the Rock Hall. That is definitely on my bucket list, to go and see all these crazy exhibits. The Sex Pistols got one. The Ramones got one. Matter of fact, I have a patch here. Yeah, look at that. That is just beautiful. That is an authentic Ramones Rock and Roll Hall of Fame class of 2002 back patch. Yeah, the guy who I bought it from, he was a collector. Whoops. He was a collector, and I was pumped to have gotten this. And he wrote me a letter with it saying, you know, I'm glad to have sold this to a fellow Ramones fan. Treat it well. And I got to see them live back in the day. I forget what year he said he got to see them at. But that meant a lot to me. And that's kind of why I started having a respect for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, is because of this new era of music. You know, the more that new music comes out, the more I'd rather listen to the old shit. The Bubba Sparks Museum, or Bubba Stacks. Bubba Stacks. I thought it was Bubba Sparks or Sprax or something like that. I remember Bubba Sparks. Have you seen pictures of Bubba Sparks lately? Doesn't even look like the same guy. Crazy. Like he was like this big, like, redneck guy. Now you look at him, doesn't even look like him. Like, have you seen Bizarre lately? Bizarre. Oh my God. He looks like a guy trying to be bizarre. It's fucking bizarre. And that's another argument that I had made a while back when they were talking about Jay-Z getting into the Rock Hall, Mary J. Blige, and probably fucking Jennifer Lopez, for all I know. D12 would have been better suited for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame after they did Devil's Night, which went platinum. And after they did Fight Music, and I think that counts. I think that should count if we're getting them to the Rock Hall. And over somebody like Jay-Z. Now, as I said, we can sit here and do a dream list of who should be inducted for 2022. You know what I'm saying? Like, we could do that. But we've got other people that got to wait their fucking turn already. You know, I mean, I couldn't even name them, but definitely Iron Maiden for sure, and Rage Against the Machine, and the fucking New York Dolls. God damn. Like, it's sad, but it is nice to see that the Sex Pistols got in, despite the fact they didn't want to, which led to my distaste for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Back in the day, I was in this, being a kid and immature. I always thought that, you had to side with your heroes. Like I hated Jack Black, and I still kind of do. He had a deal, I guess, with Johnny Lyden to be a cameo in his movie Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny. And it was when they broke into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't know if you guys have seen it. They're supposed to break into it, and there was supposed to be Johnny Lyden, standing right there talking to them or some shit. I don't know. And Johnny Lyden just never showed. And so Jack Black tried to sue him. And Johnny Lyden wrote back, basically, slapped back at him and said, I don't even know who the fuck you are. Now, granted, Johnny at the time was getting pretty old. And this was before his 2010 Public Image Limited tour. And I think he went on tour with the Sex Pistols in 08 and 09, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure that had happened. It was in 08 and or 09. So there was the Pistols tour. And then in 2010, we got Public Image Limited for their tour. And I think it was their last tour for Public Image Limited, unless they did another round and I wasn't told. But anyways, so those two had at it. And I was like, well, in high school, being a Sex Pistols guy, like, definitely, coming to my own as far as, becoming Sid Jones and my inspirations and all that. Johnny Lyden, a salute to this guy. Like this guy could do no wrong in my eyes. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is one of my heroes that really made life, better for me, that really taught me some shit. I mean, I've got his books, No Blacks, No Irish, No Irish, No Blacks, No Dogs. And I've also got his book, Anger and Energy, And the dude's a whiz. Like he is a brilliant guy. And then all of a sudden he gets this backlash for voting for Trump and why he endorsed Trump. And the liberals tried attacking him. He just fired back, and it was amazing. But unfortunately, we won't be seeing another Johnny Lyden tour. He's now a full-time caretaker for his wife, who has, I believe it's dementia or Alzheimer's. And so he's like, I become a full-time caretaker. Like, this is my job now for my wife. And if you actually saw that interview for the documentary Punk, it's a 4-part documentary series, executive producer Iggy Pop, by the way, to help put that together. During this interview, it's Henry Rollins, it was Marky Ramone, Johnny Lyden, and this other guy sitting on the other side of Marky. So Marky goes to go and say something, and Johnny Lyden takes the show. Like, he takes this whole interview, this whole panel, and he just annihilates Marky, which I thought was fucking hilarious. Like, Marky couldn't get a word in edgewise, and I like Marky Ramone. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Marky. But Johnny is always hilarious when he goes on these banters. Like, he stood up and he's like going on his antics and shit, like just typical Johnny. But as soon as the subject of his wife came up, like, his whole demeanor just changed. It just changed. It was almost like a bittersweet for me. Like, to see Johnny being Johnny, I'm like, yeah, fucking ream him a new asshole. Like, fuck yeah. Even though I love Marky Ramone, like, fucking Lyden is God. And then to talk about his wife and see him just emotionally crumble. And I was like, wow, that's powerful. Like, that is he loves his wife, man. If you ever want to calm that dude down, just ask him about his wife, and the dude just fucking mellows right out. It's sad, but it's nice to see Johnny being Johnny. Like, I remember when I saw him in New York City at Terminal 5, there was these people that were shoving their hands in Johnny's face. And he goes, hey, you're not the only motherfucking asshole in here, fucking are you? And I'm like, that is amazing. I got to see a Johnny Lyden going off on a band, live in person. Hands down, the best concert. The best fucking concert. As far as historic, as far as where I was at, the night that I had, the beautiful woman I got to spend some time with. My God in heaven. Fucking just, it is the perfect night. The perfect night. It was amazing. There's some people trying to mosh to Public Image Limited music. For those of you that have never heard Public Image Limited, it's not mosh music. And there's people trying their damnedest to do it, and they realized it just ain't working. So that was quite the sight. So when Johnny was talking shit about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and he wrote them a letter, and I know I've read you guys the letter many a times, and there's a guy that actually has to read it. So rather than me read it, you should go watch this guy read it at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, where he had to read, he goes, yeah, we can mail it to you or whatever, the award. And he has to read it out loud to everybody. It's amazing. It was a great little moment. And even though they denied to come and get their award, nonetheless, there's an exhibit for them at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which I'm looking forward to seeing. So do I agree with Johnny? Yeah, in a bit. Piss and wine, and your fucking your $10,000 drinks and what have you. Hilarious. But that's typical Johnny. Like, the dude's always been one ambitious and very, very honest, and said what he had felt and said what he had meant. So he's always had that legacy to him. He's always had that personality, and you can't fault him for that. But that's, as close as I'm going to get to seeing the Sex Pistols live. Like, it's going to have to be like, seeing some of the authentic shit at the Rock Hall. I mean, what's left of the authentic shit? Malcolm Mclaren, the Sex Pistols manager, for those of you that don't know the story of Malcolm's son was spotted. This happened years back, burning Sex Pistols merch, like rare Sex Pistols shit. And I'm like, that guy should be fucking put to death. Like, that deserves execution. You fucking prick. Like, fuck you and fuck Malcolm. You'd have to understand the history of the Sex Pistols to get where I'm coming from. And I can't imagine a lot of my Juggalo viewers understanding the Sex Pistols to that level. And you're probably thinking, well, this is supposed to be a Juggalo channel. Why are you talking about, the Sex Pistols and the Germs and Foo Fighters and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and so on? Well, the reason is I'd like to educate some of the Juggalos into other music, because all I've been seeing lately are comments like, if it ain't Insane Clown Posse, like, and it ain't Psychopathic, I just don't listen to it. I just don't fuck with it. And I think that's the mentality of a 12-year-old who just discovered a brand new band. Like, that's what I'd expect from a human being, as a 12-year-old, to say some shit like that, not a fucking grown-ass man who's hopefully got some ambition of his own, and hopefully, at least 2 brain cells he can rub together. MJ Baker writes, it's Stax Museum of American Soul Music. Ooh. Okay, so that makes sense. So it's got nothing to do with Bubba Sprax or Bubba Sparks, whatever the fucking guy that name is. Good. Okay, because I was about to say, that guy gets his own fucking museum. Holy shit! At that rate, I could get my own fucking museum. Jesus, what? This guy had like one good song that I can't even remember, but it was like a farmland, and it showed Missy Elliott driving around a fucking John Deere or something like that. Like, whatever song that was. Like, I think that's like the only good thing that he had to offer as far as music goes. But when it comes to, and like I said, do I think that the Insane Clown Posse should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? If it's for Great Malenko, absolutely. I would have no argument with that. I'll even drink a Faygo for you fucking idiots. Jesus. So, according to history, and according to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and things like that, you've got to do something. Apparently, the ways of getting in and how they choose the nominations and the nominees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for whatever class and for whatever year, there's a certain process. And there's like a certain, but according to sources, Eminem is just as eligible. Then in that case, I think that the Insane Clown Posse for Great Malenko should be. There you go. A little bit of catering to the Juggalos there. You're fucking welcome. You're happy. So, but bands like the Murder Junkies, for example, is one of the reasons why I wore this shirt, right? Just because they're not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame does not mean they haven't earned their stripes. It doesn't mean they haven't, done something of merit, okay? Like, when you look at the Murder Junkies, fucking unforgettable. People that don't like the Murder Junkies know the Murder Junkies. And if you don't know the Murder Junkies, you know G.G. Allen. All right? I remember my dad when I was a kid, and I was just getting into music. 7, 8, 9 years old, like starting to finally listen to music. We had the little chip things. I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was this like little plastic thing you'd slip in, and you got like 30 seconds of music, and you paid like $10 for it, and it's not even a full song. Do you remember that? Like, we were fucking idiots as kids. Like, you have no idea how easy your generation has it, how good your generation has it. Like, we got fucking scammed. Like, scammed. Bad. Mostly by the music industry and our favorite bands. Believe that. No, but Bubba Sparks does do a lot for heroin recovery. Okay, so like I said, he's doing something. I mean, like fucking Mad Child doing his thing to try and help with, like, heroin recovery. And I noticed that the drugs are not even just a bad thing in rock anymore, which is starting to be revealed. But artists such as DMX getting caught up in drugs. R.I.P. to that legend. It's a whole nother realm out there as far as hip hop goes, and I think that bringing that kind of thing into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it really, like, are Biggie Smalls fans even really going to go check out that exhibit? I feel like that hip hop has such a hatred towards rock, unless I'm just thinking about the underground idiots that are out there. I mean, I could be considering that, you know, as far as my generalization, but in regards to my music taste and what I like, bands like, you know, the Murder Junkies, Gigi Allen, the Germs, you know, the Circle Jerks, Black Flag, Gang Green, Flipper, like bands that are really obscure that no one's ever heard of. They've still left their stamp on history, you know. But you've got people that just don't, that'll disrespect whatever. They don't pay attention to interviews. They don't pay attention to what people are saying. They take everything at face value and move the fuck on. And I think that that's rather sad. And I think that we live in a day and age where we don't need a bunch of intellectuals. You know, we don't need people like do their own research and shit like that. That's why Marilyn Manson, unfortunately, will never make it into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And we can only hope that that doesn't happen. Like, he still gets inducted. But even with the accusations, I doubt, like, kiss it goodbye, I guess. But hopefully it becomes so dead and forgotten, because the accusations are watered down at best. Like, they are really fucking petty, really generalized, and these women are going in there with absolutely no ammo, with no backup, no nothing. And they're about to figure out real fucking quick that false accusations are not a good idea. That's my honest opinion. Now, if I'm showing I'm wrong, I'm showing I'm wrong. But the fact that one of them came out and said he looked up my skirt without my permission, and I'm sitting here like, yeah, okay. So these other ones are talking about getting beaten, stabbed, and scarred, and sliced, and beaten, and abused, and bruised, and he looked up your skirt. Wow. Just wow. Way to water down other people's fucking issues, man. Like, way to just do the hashtag Me Too thing in the lowest possible form. That's kind of fucked up. But I hope Manson gets inducted. I hope that this whole thing ends up being a fucking wash. I hope he gets to stick his middle finger up high. I hope he gets to say fuck you to the record label that dropped him. Fuck you to the manager. Fuck you to the friends that turned their backs on him. And he's found not guilty, and he gets to fucking just go out there and rage. And I hope that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame will induct him as a fucking apology for him having to endure all that. That's what I think, honestly. That's my personal thoughts on it. And that's what I think the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame should do. It shouldn't be an accusation. And fuck, even if you are accused of whatever, if you've left your mark on people through your music, and it's good music, rock music, like fucking, it meets whatever low requirements for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because apparently you don't have to do just rock music or any form of rock music. Like, you can just be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for doing anything that's dope, I guess, that gets people's attention. Then Marilyn Manson should not be, you know, cast aside when it comes to nominating him and his band. And I hope that's the case. I hope that that's the case. And I hope that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame will make a statement on that after this whole thing is over. So am I nervous for the future of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Absolutely. When it comes to these modern day artists and these artists that are, they're just regurgitated through this revolving door. Like Lil Xan, he didn't pan out. So, okay, we're just going to write the story on how he overdosed on Cheetos and get him the fuck out. Blueface fucking, I don't know, shot somebody maybe. So they get him out. You got Tekashi 6ix9ine, who's a fucking rat. Like, you get him out. These trap artists and these it's just bad. Like, it's like you get the Lil Peeps out there. Like, what has Lil Peep done to deserve to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? I mean, could you imagine the Juggalos? Like, if I were the Juggalos, I'd be pissed. I'd be really fucking pissed. You're going to put in somebody like Lil Peep, just an example. If they did ever do it, yet the Insane Clown Posse gets pushed to the wayside, I'd fucking advocate with the Juggalos night and day. I would pick ICP over Lil Peep, and I don't think that says much. I fucking can't stand his music. I don't think he's done. Like, people told me, well, he brought punk and he brought rock and he brought rap into one thing. I'm like, Sum 41 and Ludacris did a song together. Jay-Z and Linkin Park did an album together. So what's your point? Like, it's not the first time that's happened, idiot. You know what I'm saying? But it's these young kids. They fucking don't know any better. Nobody's educating them. You know, their parents are absolute shit too. If they're listening to that kind of music, probably shit parenting. I'm allowed to say that. It's my show. I ever catch my nephew listening to something like Lil Fucking Peep, he's grounded. I don't care if he lives with me or not. I don't care if he's staying with me or not. He's fucking grounded for like a week. That shit's bad for you. It's really fucking mopey too. Oh, it's so powerful. It's fucking auto-tune, dude. It's auto-tune. Like, if you're going to be original, use your original voice, you know? It's like, oh, he was so good at mixing and mastering and shit like that. Like, what did this kid do to, like, deserve to be followed around? I've seen the documentary on Hulu. Was it Hulu or Netflix? Probably Netflix, because I still have yet to see a Tekashi 6ix9ine documentary, nor would I ever. Because I saw that little Peep one just to kind of figure out, like, what the big deal was. By the end of the documentary, I went, I fucking still have no idea why this guy is so celebrated. I have no clue. No fucking clue. Like by the end of the documentary, I'm like, so he touched the lives of people. He didn't sexually assault anybody, so that's cool. Like, good for little Peep for not raping somebody and for avoiding any accusations. But I guess it was also because of how young he was. I'm like, hey, listen, if this dude's going to do fucking drugs, the dude's going to do fucking drugs. Oh, well, they implicated in the documentary that somebody else drugged him. Look, if he wasn't doing drugs, he'd have never been drugged. He'd have never been OD'd or whatever the fuck you'd call that. You know what I mean? That's not what have happened. And I'm not going to sit there and say that, you know, my heroes are fucking saints. Sid Vicious, I believe, was murdered by his mom. And of course, after meeting Nancy, it was all downhill from there. I'm going to explain something to you. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. People like Nancy, right? People like Courtney Love, they're bad for you. They're really bad for you. And those are the kinds of people that kill men. And if it wasn't her that directly killed Kurt Cobain, he killed himself because of her. And she's a miserable fucking bitch. And get this, Courtney Love ain't coming out with any accusations against Marilyn Manson. He probably refused to stick his dick in her. I mean, fucking hopefully that is the case. But I mean, she's so fucked up. Like, she doesn't know which way is up. Like, I remember her. Have you ever seen her, the roast of Courtney Love on Comedy Central? It is glorious. It is amazing. But if they're not going to induct Marilyn Manson because of his accusations, then they shouldn't induct Courtney Love into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ever for the accusations against Kurt Cobain by the public. You see how the court of public opinion really fucks things up for everybody? It's not just a one-way train. It's not just one person stating this and one person stating that. It's not just talk anymore. This is a serious issue, a real serious issue that nobody's taken seriously. Where it's like, as soon as I accuse somebody, bam, their entire reputation taken away from them. Why would I even bother taking them to court at that point? Like, I've already knocked them off their fucking mountain that they'll never be able to climb up ever again. I'm pretty sure it's a victory for me, and I'd walk away happy. You feel me? But it's never just about that. It's about taking somebody down. It's about getting people to rally up behind you. It's about the public's opinion, right? But the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame don't work like that. As far as inductions go, now they might not ever decide to induct Marilyn Manson and never state why they'll never do it. That's possible. But I think at that point, we'd be able to speculate as to why that's the case. Rock legends such as the Ramones and the Sex Pistols are in their right to be in there. But then when I heard about Biggie Smalls and a few of these other people like Jay-Z getting inducted, the only request I had, I'm like, all right, fine. We got the Foo Fighters. We got the Go-Go's. Fine. At least Pat Smear gets his award. That's like my big victory for me. Like I said, small victory, something worth celebrating, especially somebody like Pat Smear getting inducted. But if it's going to be Jay-Z, I have one request. You have to play 99 Problems live at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You have to do it. And let's talk about this. Let's talk about this real quick. And I'm serious when I say this. I'm serious. Like, this is no joking matter. I'm serious. Linkin Park, right, should have to induct Jay-Z. I think that would be excellent, and they should play one of his songs, 99 Problems, okay? I'm very serious when I say this. Jay-Z actually did an album, right? He did an album with Linkin Park. So I think that would be kind of fitting. Then we'd get to see a performance from Linkin Park. Win-win for everybody. Win-win for everybody. Who inducts? Who inducts the Foo Fighters, though? Who inducts the Foo Fighters? That's kind of a strange one, isn't it? I mean, who would you pick to have? Because it doesn't work like people think it does, where like they just get called up by, you know, whatever host and, you know, they get to do that. No. Everyone, every band, every artist that gets inducted gets to pick somebody. to induct them, like to basically give them a huge speech, a round of applause, and then fucking bring them up. Okay. Each artist gets to do that. The person who inducted Hulk Hogan into the WWE Hall of Fame was Sylvester Stallone, and rightfully so. Who else do you get to induct Hulk Hogan? Like, you get fucking John Rambo. That is who you get. That is who you get to induct you. If you were, it doesn't matter if you were a shitty business guy, if you weren't looking out for somebody else, if you've ever become a name synonymous with wrestling entertainment, even people who don't watch wrestling, people who hate wrestling know who you are. Yeah, you get somebody like Sylvester Stallone to induct you into the Hall of Fame. So who would you get for the Foo Fighters? Now, I personally would think this would be cool. And again, because I'm a huge Germs fan, I would pick Shane West. Now, before everybody starts laughing at me and making fun of me about Shane West, let me explain this to you. Shane West actually got to play Darby Crash in the film What We Do Is Secret, one of the greatest films of all time. Fight me on that. Certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. Certified fucking fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. All right? I don't care what they say on Rotten Tomatoes. It's fucking certified fresh. I know because I fucking wrote a review on it. Now, when I saw this movie, fucking excellent, it turns out the band of the Germs, like the living members, including Lorna Doone before she passed away, all loved Shane West's performance. So much so, they actually did a revival of the Germs that they went on tour, including Warped Tour, and Shane West was the new frontman. He's even got the actual Germs tat. If you see any movies with him after What We Do Is Secret, you'll see that tattoo on his arm. That is a legit tattoo he got for the movie. He should induct the Foo Fighters, especially because of Pat Smear. And I think it'd be a really cool reunion, because I don't know if we'll ever see the Germs inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That may never happen, but I would like to see that, especially for Pat. Like I said, Foo Fighters, the rest of the guys, fine. They're good, I guess, whatever. But it's definitely Pat that's like the golden child. That's like, he's got a long legacy behind him, and he's got a bright future ahead of him. And he's a really, really just like down to earth guy. Like, he'll sit there and answer your questions. I've seen his interviews, and he's just like, I don't think he realizes how great he is. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just think he's got that Steve Jones thing where he's like, yeah, I was in the Sex Pistols for a while. I was with Thin Lizzy, and I got some funny stories to tell you. Like there's like, okay, is Johnny Lyden full of himself? Yeah, and he fucking deserved it. Okay, just like Hulk Hogan deserves it for what he's done. Right? You can't fault either of them. Both of them legends in their own rights. So I think that should be the case, especially for somebody like Pat. But for the Foo Fighters, I mean, I don't know the rest of the band to know who they'd pick to induct them, but I hope it's somebody badass, somebody cool. Like, it probably won't be like Sylvester Stallone or something like that, but somebody dope, like somebody from back in the day, like fucking Keith Richards. Holy fuck, that would be excellent. Like, imagine you could pick anybody you want to induct you. Anybody you want to induct you, Keith fucking Richards. Goddamn, just to see him again. Like if I was, you know, the lead frontman of Foo Fighters, and I'm sitting there with my band, and we get to be inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Long time coming. And I'm like, all right, so who do we get? We should get somebody who's like fucking ridiculous to induct us. Like somebody stupid, ridiculous that nobody would ever expect. Right? You know what I'd do? Because I'm an asshole. I would find somebody who was nominated for the class of 2021, didn't get it, and they have to bring me out. That's what I do, because I'm a dick and I'm an asshole like that. All right, I just think it'd be fucking genius. Like, it should be me. It should be me on this stage, but I'm gonna have to induct, these guys, and I'm really sad about that. Like, I'd do some shit like that, and I'd come out and fucking bragging and boasting. Like, I would give a 2.5-hour speech. 2.5-hour speech just talking about how fucking awesome I am. If I ever got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, like, I'd just be like, yeah, I'm a fucking legend, and it started on this day, on January 11th, 1990, in a place called Berlin, New Hampshire, and people would be like, ugh. Like, as soon as I started that, I'm like, hey, you sit the fuck down. I'm talking here. That's what I swear. I'd have so much fun with it. I wish there was like more people that had that kind of an attitude for it, but maybe they do. All right, maybe they go in there with like, I'm going to boast, I'm going to brag, but they see all those people in their suits and their dresses, which, by the way, I'd like to add, you can go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony as well. Tickets are on sale right now for $143, and that's a starting cost of it. Now, that's a true one. I want to go. I want to see that really bad, especially like for the Foo Fighters. Like, I'd go see the Foo Fighters, you see the Go-Go's get inducted, and then I'd leave. I'd fucking leave. All right, and if it's Jay-Z up first, I'm like, fucking, if he ain't doing 99 Problems, I ain't fucking interested. But the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, to me, I guess means a lot more than it used to. And I'm starting to have more appreciation for it. And so people that are upset about Jay-Z getting inducted, it is what it is. People that are upset about, Iron Maiden not getting in, trust me, I'm just as upset as you are. But there's always next year. I know Judas Priest still was like waiting their turn for like the longest fucking time. What's funny is Biggie Smalls gets inducted during the year of a pandemic, so like nobody can be there anyway. It's kind of like karma's a bitch, isn't it? Like you just got to look at it from a different perspective. That's all you have to do is look at it from a different perspective. Like Rock and Roll Hall of Fame pull some shit, like whatever. Wouldn't it be fucked up if like P. Diddy inducted Jay-Z? Somebody like P. Diddy inducting Jay-Z. Fucking hell. You know what I think? I think that the person who should induct Jay-Z should definitely be somebody from Linkin Park. Absolutely. At least there's some balance there. At least there's something there. But will he? I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe he'll pick like what's that guy's name? He was a host for something on MTV back in the day. Not Nick Carter. Nick Campbell? Fucking Nick Cannon. That's the guy. Nick Cannon. Somebody like Jay-Z getting inducted by a nobody like Nick Cannon. That, God, I'd die laughing, MJ Baker. I'd think that was the funniest fucking thing ever. Because I'm not a fan of Jay-Z. Like 99 Problems was like one of my favorite songs for like a long time. And then I stopped listening to it. And I started listening to it again. I'm like, I've got appreciation for this song. Like I really do. And I really think that song is good. I think it's a great song. It's better than the rock version even, I'll say. But I think they should definitely do like a rock mix with it. I think there is one out there if I'm not mistaken. I think there's a remix or something like that. I don't know. But as far as Jay-Z being inducted, I mean, it's better than, I guess, P. Diddy. Like, small victories. Like I said, small victories. So if you're upset by who got inducted, I'm sorry. But as they always say, there's always next year. But we take thanks. We take what we can. And the Foo Fighters get to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And for me, Pat Smear being in there, that's a victory. I'm very happy to see that. And hopefully that means sometime soon the Germs will be inducted. Because that's what I really want to see. I really want to see who gets... I'd like to see the Germs get inducted. I'd love to see Black Flag and Circle Jerks get inducted. I would love that. And it's going to be all the members of Black Flag. All the former lead singers, all of them. All, like every single person who ever even picked up an instrument for Black Flag has to be inducted. Just so that way it takes up an hour and a half of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame time. That's what should happen. Like even Marky, he got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, even though he wasn't one of the original members of the Ramones. He later on, joined up with the Ramones after having his own band, but he still got to be inducted. And I think that's awesome. It's really sad, Dee. What happened with Dee? It wasn't too long after they got inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he passed away. Heroin overdose. These things, they happen. Happens in rock, happens in rap. So you can just go ahead and shove that up your ass as far as, it's just a bunch of drug dealers and druggies and all that in fucking rock and punk. Yeah, well, it fucking happened in hip hop too. I said it once and I'll say it again. You could sit there and say Punk died of a heroin overdose back in the 80s, back in the 70s, whatever. But I can tell you that at least they didn't die from lead in their fucking diet like Nipsey Hussle did. At least they didn't die from lead in their diet like XXXTentacion did. At least there was motherfuckers that held it down for their fans. At least there was motherfuckers that didn't get caught up in some fucking gang shit that caught innocent bystanders. Like, come on now. Like, if you come at me with that shit, not only am I not going to forgive you and I'm going to hold that fucking grudge until the day I die, but I'm going to continue to beat that horse. I will continue to beat that drum until the day I die. I promise you that. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Like, there's the motherfuckers like that. It's one of the reasons why I'll never go back to working for Rox TV. It's one of the reasons why I'm always going to stay solo. Because if anybody ever made that mistake again, I've got nothing to lose now. I've got a book guaranteed to come out before September. I've got a book that's guaranteed to come out at least for the giveaway copies of it. The official release date is going to be October 8th. But I've got my own patches that are still available. I've got my own Teesprings. I've got my own channel. I've got my own shit. So I don't need that. I'm going to continue to be a prick and an asshole for as long as I can be until the day I retire, which will be November 8th. And I'm going to continue to raise hell and piss people off to the best of my ability. And if you ain't down with that, fuck what you think. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Congratulations to the Foo Fighters and to Pat Smear for being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of fucking Fame. I think that's excellent. A huge, huge salute to you guys. Salute to those in the chat. Salute to those who are going to tune in later on. And say goodnight to the bad fucking guy. Much love and much respect. Make sure you guys are following me on Facebook and on Instagram at The Real Sid Jones.